Hi, good evening. I'm Stephanie Smith, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my research around the agri-food sector in Myanmar, specifically partnerships between smallholder farmers and large agri-food companies. But before I dive too deep into that, I just want to take a second to set the stage a little bit and frame out some context. So after being under military rule for several decades, the 2015 landmark democratic election in Myanmar really put the country in a position for some pretty significant transformations. This also means some pretty considerable economic growth and development, which is likely to come by way of increased engagement with foreign markets and entrance into really large global supply chains. Now, with more than 50% of the country's population employed in agri-food activities, that means that this sector in particular has a very important role to play as a catalyst for livelihood improvement and just broader national growth. Smallholder farmers in particular play an important role in the overall agricultural production in Myanmar. So before we dive too deep into the actual value chains and the agri-food sector itself, it's important to think about some fundamental elements that really help with smallholder inclusion in these processes. And these elements are threefold. The first is an enabling and stable public sector. The second is an engaged and receptive private sector. The third is organized and empowered farmers. And at the center of all of this is the relationships and the partnerships among these stakeholders. So my research is really focused on the left side of this graph, and I've really dug into the relationship and the partnerships between the farmers who are actually growing the materials and the products and the huge agri-food companies that are buying these products. And oftentimes when smallholder farmers are getting ready to engage in some of these bigger global supply chains for the first time, they run up against some pretty significant information barriers. This includes some pretty incomplete and imperfect information regarding their brand new private sector partners who are getting ready to purchase their products. So in an attempt to help overcome some of those information barriers, I have developed an assessment framework whereby smallholder farmers and on-the-ground development practitioners can work together to kind of score and assess companies side by side and make more informed decisions about these partnership options. The assessment tool itself really relies on 5 primary measurement themes. The first one has to do with the capacity for the company in question to provide technology transfers and other financial or material resources to the farmers. The second measurement theme has to do with the contracting terms and conditions and the company's past performance and contract adherence. The third measurement theme has to do with the demand from the company for higher quality standards or certification programs. Think of organic or fair trade certifications as an example. The fourth measurement theme looks at the established business or trade relationships that the company has in Myanmar already. And finally, the last measurement theme has to do with a handful of indicators related to corporate ethics and the company's past performance in those areas. Now, the collaboration between the practitioner and the farmer really comes into play with the scoring mechanism, and here's how it works. The practitioner in the field uses in-depth research and interviews and publicly available information about these companies to basically score the company itself based on these 5 measurement themes. Then the farmer works with the development practitioner to more or less assign a score to the relationship itself. They put a relative importance weight on each of these measurement indicators so that it takes into account their real-time vulnerabilities, conditions, needs, capabilities, etc. So here is a visual representation of how the side-by-side comparison might go for 2 companies. You can see the 5 measurement themes outlined on the outside of that web that I spoke about earlier. And these 2 companies, Company A, Company Z, very original names for these companies, they are both trying to secure a sourcing contract with a farming cooperative in Myanmar. And you can kind of see how the interaction happens between the practitioner score and the farmer weight. For example, Company A in green has a much higher rating for their corporate ethics score. And this is a reflection of the fact that they have a very transparent supplier code of conduct and a very robust grievance mechanism for human rights abuses. In contrast, if you look at the contracting conditions measurement theme for Company Z in blue, you can see that they have a much lower score. And this is a byproduct of the fact that they tend to contract with wholesalers and brokers, not necessarily with farmers directly. And this has created a very complex web of intermediaries in the value chain, which ends up being detrimental many times for smallholder farmers. So this example only shows 2 companies, and as you can see, as the circumference of the web gets larger, it's a higher score for the company in question, which will hopefully indicate a higher likelihood of a productive and sustainable relationship with a smallholder partner. You could compare 4 companies, you could compare 6. It doesn't matter. The point of this tool is to provide a generalizable and consistent methodology for stacking these companies against each other and hopefully making a more informed decision about sourcing partnerships. And the development of this tool all came about with the acknowledgement that there will never be a one-size-fits-all solution, as all of us in this room are probably well aware at this point, particularly around agri-food value chain upgrades or ushering smallholder farmers into global supply chains. We'll never have a magical solution for everybody. But the best thing that maybe we can do as development practitioners is to play a part in overcoming the information barriers that would otherwise deter sustainable long-term growth for the farmers. Mary.
How do you see this tool being used in the field when you're talking about development practitioners, responsible farmers? How do you see that being used in the field?
Yeah, so my answer to that is twofold. As we've learned from a couple other past presentations, Myanmar is kind of a darling in the development world, if you will, right now, given its position internationally. So the idea of a development practitioner being on the ground is fairly inevitable for these types of value chain development projects and whatnot. But the second part of my answer is, oh, I wish Anna Mann was here, because it requires kind of a 2-pronged approach to this type of value chain expansion that would benefit greatly from a tool like hers, the one that she produced for crop potential assessments. And basically would enable a development practitioner to stand in the field alongside a farmer or a farming cooperative, look one way up the supply chain and say, okay, here is a handful of options we have regarding product diversification and upgrading, and then be able to look the other way up the supply chain and say, great, here are some potential partners who would be a really great fit with this, and hopefully yield some really great benefits in the long run. Danny.
How long do you think it would take for like a dual farmer or development practitioner to assess what the best crop and what the best partnership would be? And then would there be like any sharing of like knowledge and insight so that the development practitioner standing next to the like farmer next door, you don't have to like do it all over again?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this would be implemented. I didn't have a direct client, first of all, so my audience for this was somebody like USAID or maybe FAO or other entities that would be involved on the ground with this type of project. So ideally, you know, that kind of data collection and knowledge sharing would be kind of built into the structure of an organization like that. In terms of timing, I don't know that I have a safe answer on what an initial timeline would look like. That is like recommendation number 1 in my report, is to actually take this in the field, test it, iterate it, and go from there.
Was your tool, the inputs that go into it, was it based off of another model, or were you creating it entirely from scratch?
Okay, well, yeah, great question. So on the one hand, there are plenty of value chain assessment tools already in existence through the likes of USAID and DFIN and whatnot. And then on the other hand, there are all these sustainability indexes for corporate entities that we can look at. But I was trying to close the gap between those two, so I kind of took key elements from both sides of that to make it more context specific for this situation.
Getting back to your original question, I mean, this is a fascinating project, and you and both look at it from 2 very different directions, which is fantastic. One could imagine that you get situations, though, where one side and the other side don't come out with the same answer, where what makes sense from a kind of a product and agricultural and other point of view is not necessarily where the markets are, and vice versa. How do you see those 2 pieces coming together?
so glad you asked that. That was actually kind of the entire crux of our combined research efforts. There weren't many combined research efforts, but this is where we really sat down together, Anne and I at least, in this iteration of the process to examine what were some potential top-tier destination markets, if you will, for Myanmar at this given point in time, given the regional context and kind of the state of agri-food value chains right now. And so that was kind of the first step, was we agreed on those and then kind of ran the assessments from there and designed from there with those destination markets in mind. So I don't know if that's the right answer for every implementation of this tool, but it could certainly be a way to do that.